Pinworms. Either you've heard about them or your day is about to be ruined, like mine was when I found out what they were. Now, I have a personal story with pinworms. I was at clinical one day, minding my own business as one does, and I get a call from my mom, which is unusual because she's supposed to be at work that day. So I text her back and I'm like, I thought you were at work. Why are you calling me? Is something wrong? She was like, no, I had to take your brother to the doctor because he has pinworms. Now, I didn't know what that was. So we get off of the phone and I'm researching, finding out all of the things about pinworms, and I'm traumatized. And I look at one of the preceptors who I was doing clinical with at the time, and I told her, I was like, oh my gosh, like pinworms, what? And she was like, have you not had peds yet? I was like, no, pediatrics is my next rotation. So that was how I learned about pinworms. So hopefully this keeps you from being as surprised as I was to find out that these things even exist. Now, what are pinworms? Pinworms are technically a parasitic disease, and they are caused by a white, thin, round worm called Enterobius vermicularis. Now, I have a picture of the eggs right here, and then I have a picture of the worm right here. And how they are spread is from the fecal-oral route. Now, what does that mean? So, one of the most common characteristics of pinworms is intense anal itching. So that means somebody who is infected with pinworms itches, they don't properly perform hand hygiene, they touch surfaces, they shake hands with people, and people pick up those pinworm eggs on their hands from touching the surfaces, from shaking hands of people who haven't been performing hand hygiene. And then they touch their face, their mouth, their nose, and pinworm eggs are so small that they can actually be inhaled. Now, once you have ingested pinworm eggs, you're not immediately going to start seeing signs and symptoms. You are going to start seeing signs and symptoms 1 to 3 months after you ingested those eggs. Now, who is most commonly at risk? So, according to the CDC, it most commonly occurs among children, institutionalized persons, and household members of persons with pinworm infection. In these groups, prevalence can reach 50%. So, if somebody in your household has pinworms, you have a high possibility of also contracting a pinworm infection. Now, there is one silver lining, I would call it. Humans are the only host for pinworms, so you can't get pinworms from your dog, you can't get them from your cat, you can't get them from your fish, you can't get them from your bird. They only like humans. Now, what are the symptoms? There are numerous symptoms associated with pinworm due to the lack of sleep that it causes. However, the most common is the classic intense anal itching, especially at night. Now, this is going to disrupt someone's sleep. They might start grinding their teeth in their sleep, and they might start experiencing insomnia because this itching is extremely intense. So that can lead to mood changes, that can lead to changes in appetite, and all around when somebody's not getting sleep, it can cause numerous symptoms. Now, diagnosis. How is pinworm diagnosed? Well, when somebody's experiencing intense anal itching at night, that is the first ding, ding, ding in somebody's head, hey, pinworms, especially in healthcare workers. But as far as diagnosis-wise, you can look for the worms and actually visualize them by looking in the perianal region of somebody who is suspected to have pinworms about 2 to 3 hours after they have fallen asleep, because that is when these female pinworms are going to come out and lay their eggs around the anus. That is what causes that itching. Now, another diagnostic test is called the tape test. And this is a little bit intense. The tape test, somebody who is expected to have a pinworm infection, for 3 consecutive mornings, as soon as they wake up, before they go to the bathroom, before they take a shower, you take a clear piece of tape and you place it on the anal region, and then you take it off. And the thought process behind this is you take it to a doctor's office, a lab. they're going to look at that piece of tape underneath the microscope, and they're going to be able to see pinworm eggs. Now, seeing pinworm eggs, you're not going to find them in feces. You're not going to find the worms in feces. So that's why we can't try to look for worms in a stool sample, because they're not going to be there. Now, the third way that you can diagnose pinworms is actually taking a sample from underneath somebody's nails who is suspected to have pinworms. And the thought process behind this is that they're going to be itching, they're going to have that itchiness, and so when you take a sample from underneath somebody's nail and you look at it under a microscope, you're liable to see the eggs from those female pinworms. Now, treatment, because pinworms are so common, they can be treated with an over-the-counter prescription called pyrantel palmate, which is also called, as you can see right here, this is just an example of one, Reese's pinworm medicine. I've also seen it called like Pin X, and this is a 2-dose medication. So the first dose is taken as soon as possible, and then the second dose is taken 2 weeks after that first dose. And the reason behind this, according to the CDC, is that this medication does not reliably kill pinworm eggs. The second dose is to prevent reinfection by adult worms that hatched from eggs that were not killed by the first treatment, which makes sense, because if this medicine is only killing the adults and you just take one dose, 2-3 weeks down the road, you can possibly have a reinfection because of the eggs that weren't initially killed. Like I said, this is available over the counter, so you want to treat everybody in the household as if they do, because of how easily they are spread. Like I said, you want to do proper hand hygiene. The person who does have pinworms, you can encourage them to take showers at the beginning of every morning to help wash the eggs from the anal region. You can discourage hand biting, nail biting. You need to trim your nails short. Wash everyone's bedding in extremely hot water and dry it in extremely hot temperatures. And you need to make sure that you repeat this initial dose. If you don't come back in 2 weeks, there's a chance of reinfestation, and reinfestation is incredibly easy. Now, if somebody does become reinfected, it's recommended that you treat the reinfection the same way you treated the initial infection. So you don't want to go from taking this pyrantel palmate and going and taking a different kind of pinworm medication. It's suggested that you take this medication even if you do have a reinfection. Now, with all of this being said, pinworms don't sound like a fun time, but there are ways to prevent pinworm infections. Simple hand hygiene can take you the longest way. And if you do end up getting pinworms, it's not a huge deal. They are treatable with a non-prescription over-the-counter medication. And while reinfection is highly, it happens, don't fear, because it can be treated. And then my last slide for you guys is my works cited.